Hi cuties! Alright, I've gotten through July. I read 18 books in July. Woo! It was a lot. July was a difficult month for reading, even though, yeah, I read 18 books, but still. I was also writing a book at the same time. Thankfully, we had the reading rush, which helped me get through a couple of books were just graphic novels, so they were really fast to get through. Audiobooks, again, saved my life. There was no theme to July. It was whatever I wanted to do. A lot of new releases, some other stuff I've just been having on the back burner. I didn't finish my entire TBR because of how my Libby app was working. I still have holds from when I started the month. I still am waiting on them. Like the Book Thief, I didn't get to do the Book Thief. I'm still waiting on it. Whenever it drops, I will read it, but there were a few of those that I just did not get to, so oh well. I'm trying to not make this a long video of me talking about books, because you know me, I don't shut up about books. Let's talk about the books. The very first book that I read as an audiobook was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the prequel to The Hunger Games, and there was a lot of controversy about this book because people are like, why do we need the villain story for this horrible dystopian place? We're already living in it. The thing is, Suzanne Collins does not bring about her writing without care and thought. There was a reason for this story being released now. It is not an excuse for how President Snow is. It is the backstory of how he came to be that way and how we can see all of the grooming that is done, all of the manipulation that he does, that other people do. It's more like looking into the full government and seeing all of the issues within it that help a villain rise. And so the issues that we are, seeing in today's world, it's not just one person that is the problem. It's many, and those that choose to support this one person. Do you get what I'm saying here? With his story, he has the opportunity to choose good. He has those opportunities multiple times, and he chooses wrong at every turn. That's what makes this a really interesting narrative, because he could have been good. He could have done those things. He actively chose not to. And that's kind of what the parallel is. It is really well written. Suzanne Collins her writing is so good, and the character of Lucy Gray is, I love Lucy Gray so much. Her ending is, the parallels that happen in this, all of the little nods to the Hunger Games eventuality. You can see why certain things set Snow off, especially when it comes to Katniss and stuff like that. There's just so much interwoven stuff that you have to read this pretty deeply. Don't take it at a surface level, because there's so much going on underground, if you will. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Excellent book. Next up, one of my most anticipated releases was The Betrothed by Kiera Cass. And I saw the reviews for this, and people were being like, this was horrible, this is awful, and I'm like, what? Why y'all hating on Kiera Cass? Guys, she is the queen of kind of trashy YA romance for us. We know this. We're not saying the Selection series was Jane Austen or anything like that. It's not a classic, but it is something we all love. What could possibly be wrong with this book? And I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, I get it. There's it feels like standard Kiera Cass. I don't hate it. It's, an interesting kind of love triangle without really being a love triangle. We get that forbidden romance kind of stuff that, Kiera's known for. And then it happens. And I understand why everyone is so mad about this book. And I don't want to spoil it for you. If you want spoilers, message me directly and I'll tell you why I am so disappointed in this book. Granted, I do think I will continue with the series when it comes out, because I have a tiny bit of hope that what happened at the end of this book is not true. Teeny tiny bit of hope. Because no body, no confirmation. That's all I'll say about that. I also thought some of the stuff was a little, I mean, it's Kiera Cass writing. I don't expect a lot, which is horrible because I do love Kiera Cass. I think she's really good at bringing us into this whirlwind romancy kind of world. And the character of Hollis she's interesting and different. You know, she's been groomed for, you know, being this. She doesn't expect much from Jameson. She expects to just be tossed aside, but when she's really starting to be like, oh, I'm gonna become queen, she actively works on it. And so other people were saying, well, why is she so perfect if her parents were like that? And I'm like, trust me, I get those kind of characters very well. They're believable. But I really didn't understand was the sudden kind of resentment between her and her, like, lady-in-waiting kind of character. Because it's just, wow, you're gonna stay friends with this person after all that? Okay. So there was a lot of issues that came about this book, but I have hopes for the next one that we might see some improvement. I'm still holding on to that because it is Kiera Cass. Wow, that ending just went off the rails. Next up, I got to read the audiobook for Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a kind of continuation of the Raven cycle, but it is focused on Ronan Lynch, who is my personal favorite character from the Raven Boys. This was very confusing for me because we did have so many other POVs that I didn't really understand. I really just wanted to focus on Ronan and Adam. I wanted more Adam. I was kind of shocked at how little Adam we really got in this, considering the end of the Raven cycle. I thought there was going to be a lot more, and I was kind of disappointed with that. There's a lot of other narratives, and they're not bad. It was just confusing. I think one of the other things that's just very confusing is when you listen to the audiobook, he doesn't go between, like, tell you that it's a new chapter, and when the POV changes, there's no kind of warning to that, and I was like, oh, huh? What? It made me confused a lot. So this was okay. I do want to continue with this series. I mean, it's Maggie Stiefvater writing, which is very kind of magical realism prose. It's reminiscent of kind of Anna Marie Micklemore's writing in a different kind of way. It has that telling you without really telling you. It's not like showing you either. It's just kind of like confusing you into seeing what it looks like. Otherwise, I did enjoy this a lot, okay? I thought it was good. I do love my boy Ronan. And, you know, it did face more of his brothers and stuff, which Declan is also kind of like, I hate him, but I don't at the same time because I kind of get it. Oh, she makes really good complicated characters. I'll say that. Next up, a weird book. We have Space Opera by Catherine M. Valenti. Very reminiscent of Hitchhiker's Guide, which is one of my favorite books of all time. It was the book that really got me into reading back in like middle school, and the way that this is written is very similar to Douglas Adams. And of this futuristic world, and aliens come and they're like, you get to compete to see if you guys get to live, basically. Or, you know, we're gonna destroy our whole planet. Cool that? Cool. They have to find their representative to sing in a intergalactic singing competition, and as long as they don't suck the worst, they can continue living. It's very strange. There is a weird pregnancy situation, so if you're not into, like, well, male pregnancy, it's so weird. This is a really weird book, but it's really funny at the same time. There was a lot about it. I was like, what? Ew? And then the other parts of it, I was like, okay, this is freaking hilarious. So I do recommend physically reading it. I didn't think the audiobook was great, but it's still, like, made me laugh a lot, and it made me a little bit uncomfortable at some point. It's weird. It's a weird book, and if you want a weird sci-fi read with an intergalactic singing competition, you might like this book. I read 2 books in a series, not consecutively. The second one I just finished barely on time, but that is Truthwitch by Susan Dennard and Windwitch, which is the sequel. I do have the other 2 books in the series right now, which is Sightwitch, which is a prequel, and then Bloodwitch, which is the 3rd in the series. And this was weird because I really liked Truthwitch a lot. I thought this was really good. It was a very different kind of cultural fantasy world. It has hints of Avatar and the Grishaverse kind of mixed together with this type of magic system with witchery. We have a prince and princess a brother and sister who are very reminiscent of a little bit of Zuko Azula, but not so drastic with Azula's character, especially in the second one. I really enjoyed Truthwitch, and then Windwitch happened, and I don't know what happened. I didn't like it as much. I don't know, it couldn't hold my attention. It was just kind of boring. And the only parts that I was really into was Iseult and Edwin's character, which, by the way, I swear to God, some of the names in here, I think Susan Dennard did the thing where you key smash and then you group some together to make up the names, because Edwin is spelled like Aeduean or something like that. Where the hell is Edwin? He has like full on, there it is. Oh, Aeduan. That's Edwin. But when she says it in the audiobook, I thought it was Edwin. Windwitch didn't do it for me. Granted, there are some really good reviews for Bloodwitch, so, and since that's really Edwin's probably main storyline, I will probably like that a lot more because he is like my favorite character. He's kind of a Zuko character too, even though Merrick is really the Zuko here. But I don't know, he's kind of, I mean, he and Merrick have both Zuko qualities. I'll say that, and that's probably why I am so into their character arcs. Sophia's character, like, Sophia was really cool in this one. I didn't care for Sophia in this one at all. But Iseult and Edwin are carrying the series for me, so make of that what you will. I've seen some crazy rave reviews about this series from booktubers that I love. It's just that this one was disappointing. Loved the first one. It was so cool and unique. And I'm just like, what happened? What happened to you? I don't know. I checked off quite a few books from my 2020 reads this month. I'm just saying, because that one that we just talked about was on it, and Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo was on it, and I read this one. And so everybody who has read this, from the reviews that I've seen, I'm kind of just going to talk a lot about what people are saying and why they're wrong. With Ninth House, it's different. This is an adult book by her. It's not Six of Crows. It is not the Grishaverse. It is completely different. It's an adult thriller mystery with kind of urban fantasy vibes in a, whatchamacallit, elite school like Harvard. What do they call them schools? What is the term? Emily! What's it called? Like, the schools like Harvard and Yale? What are they called?
I know what you're thinking of.
What's the term?
Ivy
League schools. Thank you. Ivy League school. That's where she's at. She is a character who is then involved in like this secret houses, Ninth House, that partake in some occultist stuff for their prosperingness. That's not a word. She is actually like poor. Her name is Galaxy Stern, but she calls herself Alex. I think that's really cool that her name is Galaxy. And she has the ability to kind of see ghosts, which are known as Greys. And that's why she was invited into the school to become a Dante, or the Dante. And then Virgil is the guy who's kind of leading her to be into the spot, kind of like a mentor figure. But her mentor is missing. There's some kind of time bendiness, or not bendiness, but like some flashbacks of what's happening. There are a lot of dark adult themes, which is usually not my jam, but it works really well in this one, that I was actually super into it. It takes a bit to get into it, I will say. It has kind of a slow start, kind of confusing start, but once it picks up and you're getting into this mystery of this missing, well, not missing girl, but a girl who is murdered, and the investigation with it, and how the society functions and stuff, it's really intense, and I'm really excited for the sequel, especially with the way that ended. I liked it. I liked the connection between Alex and the Greys, and how the twists that happened. There was like some twists you were expecting and others you weren't. Granted, oh my god, I can't even talk about it. There is one scene that Alex gets back at kind of a frat boy who hurts her friend and embarrasses her on camera. There's a drug that's going around that basically makes you able to control people because they will submit to anything. It drugs her friend and makes her do some pretty raunchy stuff on camera. And to get back at him, I literally can't talk about it because I'm gonna puke thinking about it again. There's a very gross scene of what Alex makes him do as revenge. It involves eating something on camera that is disgusting. And that's all I can say without thinking about it again and almost puking myself. Ninth house. It is intense, it is gory, it is crazy and mystery. And it's something that I normally don't like. It's kind of one of the reasons I don't really read a lot of adult fiction. But with Leigh Bardugo's writing, I liked this and I want to see the next one. Next up, we have a book that I absolutely loved. I think it might be one of my favorites of the month. And that is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. And I'm finally getting into this. I'm still waiting for the next audiobook that's why it's still sitting on this shelf here, of Legendary for the sequel, but there was like a million weeks hold on that one. I don't understand why, because there was only like a 2-week hold on this one and a 2-week on the finale, but Legendary, apparently that's the one everybody wants, which is weird for me because the character Legendary is around is my least favorite character in this book. Anyway, this is a story all about how our Scarlet Dragna gets turned upside down. I'm sorry. So Scarlet and Tella are sisters, and they're really sisters. Like, you really understand the sister vibe going on here. Tella is a very annoying little sister who's also very promiscuous and just so freaking annoying. I really didn't like her character all that much. That's why I'm very nervous about the sequel, because it's going to be focused on Tella. But Scarlet's character is really, really cool. And we have Julian, and he's all wrapped up in it, and there's some amazing twists that happen in this. But Scarlet's been writing letters to Legend, who is like this master circus performer thing where people go to Caraval to have some like crazy shenanigans happen. There's always a competition for a crazy prize, and she's been writing to Legend to have him come back to her town, even though the Caraval does not go to the same place twice, and it's already been there before she was born. But she ends up getting 2 tickets because she's about to get married, and so Legend sends her tickets for her and her fiance to go. Thing is, she doesn't know who her fiance is. She ends up wanting to escape because her father is incredibly abusive, and so she kind of ends up kidnapped by Julian and Tella. Mostly by Julian. He already brings Tella to the place and then comes back for her. They get wrapped up in the plot of the game for the year, with her sister being the kind of center of it. So people have to find her, basically. And so she gets wrapped up in the game of trying to find her sister. Shenanigans ensue. It's a crazy ride, and I thoroughly enjoyed this so much. I think the only reason I did not give this 5 stars, and I gave it 4.5, is because of Tella's character being super annoying. Other than that, everything else is great, and I like it a lot, and it's crazy! There you go. Next up, a book I also thoroughly enjoyed was The Babysitter's Coven by Kate Williams. So it's present day, and so it loses some stars in general from the general populace because it references a lot of very, like, older millennial humor that I get, so I appreciate it, but I highly doubted that our characters here are so involved in like early 90s and kind of late 90s culture. A lot of references to different TV shows and stuff that I grew up with and things that I loved that I kind of have doubt that teenagers today would really be into. So, granted, our main character really loves thrift store stuff. They create these weird costumes every single day to like a kind of an outfit of what they're trying to be. Her and her best friend both coordinate outfits in a way that's just like a homage to a lot of really nerdy culture that no one else gets, but they're like, whatever, it's them. They have a babysitters club, and they later find out that there are some more, it's not really witchy, but there is magic and superpowers. So there's some telekinesis that happens, there is pyrokinesis that happens, and a lot of other kinesis. Is that a word? There is some monster fighting and portal opening and stuff. It's super fun. It's a fun romp. If you watch shows like Buffy, if you watch The Craft, Beetlejuice, and The Babysitter's Club, then you'll probably enjoy this book. I know I definitely did. I am excited for the sequel. It should be very interesting to see how this goes. Overall, I thoroughly enjoy this, so don't take it too seriously, I think, and then you'll really like it. People who are taking it so seriously, I think that's the issue for them, but I really enjoy this. And this cover is just, it's so good. Look at how pretty it is. It's just gorgeous cover. Next up, we have Zero Bomb by M.T. Hill. I did not like this. There you go. Wasn't good. It's an adult book. It's really confusing, and I didn't care. It's told in like a bunch of different parts where each part is a different part of the story, and the first part of the story is about the character of Remy, whose daughter has died and he's kind of living on his own, but he's not a very relatable character. He's kind of awful and gets involved with this secret organization that tells him his daughter is alive, and he's kind of had like a mental breakdown or whatever. And the plot twists that happen in here are not good plot twists. They kind of make you hate the main character more, and he's not even the main character for the rest of the book. He's only the main character for like this much, and then you read like a story. There's an actual like abridged story in here, and then there are like some transcripts that happen, and then we get to Martha, which is his daughter, and her perspective, and her life is just kind of a mess, and I didn't get it. I didn't get it. I don't know if this was meant to be highbrow or if it was just really poorly written, but I didn't get it and I didn't like it at all. Sorry. Next up, we get into the reading rush, and the first one I read was Mad Max Fury Road by George Miller, Mark Sexton, Nico Lathoris, Tristan Jones, Jesus, Riccardo Burchielli. This is a graphic novel. There's a couple different short stories in here that are all prequels for the movie Mad Max Fury Road. And if you read the introduction here, you understand that these stories were actually thought out during the making of the movie, so they're not just like afterthoughts. This is all canonical information, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I especially loved Furiosa's story with the wives, so it's kind of like the build up into why Furiosa was involved with them and how she got them out and stuff. And Capable, my girl Capable, my redheaded Capable, who I absolutely love. She's my favorite character aside from Nux in the movie, and like them together is amazing. You see some really good stuff in here, and that's the thing. I'm not really a graphic novel reader or anything, or a comic reader, but I really, really enjoyed this. So if you are a fan of Mad Max Fury Road and you want to see kind of the prequel stuff, a little bit of insight into how this artist got working with George Miller for the film, then definitely pick this one up. Next up, another graphic novel that I actually got in an owl crate was Witchy by Ariel Slemmet-Rees, and this is so fun! The amount of your power and magic depends on the length of your hair. So I'm really trying to grow mine out, guys. If your hair is too long, you could be considered an enemy of the Empire. And we have our main character whose father was killed because he had too long of hair, and so she actually hides her hair length with a shortening spell. Her and her friends, kind of friends. There's one character that I'm like, are you friends or are you enemies? They're frenemies, I guess. Discover that she actually has really long hair, but she's not that powerful of a witch, so there's this weird contradiction with her character, and they're all forced to kind of show off their power and see if they're going to get conscripted into the Witch Guard, which her friends want to, but she doesn't want to because they killed her parents, or her father at least. Her mom is an amazing character. Normally, I don't really care too much for parent roles, but her mom is bomb ass. Oh my god, I love her mom. So Nynaeve actually ends up cutting her hair like super freaking short, to the point of almost, I think she might, it's kind of like she's bald, except for her bangs. She keeps her bangs because, you know, gotta keep those. She ends up going on the run because she is conscripted and she doesn't want to, so she goes on the run. She meets a raven, and the talking raven, and he's my favorite character because you know what his name is? He wants it to be like the Harbinger of Doom and stuff like that, but his real name is Banana. And the next bird I get, you bet your ass I'm naming it Banana, because I loved the bird in this. I loved a lot of the characters that come up in this. We have a lot of really good representation. We have trans representation in here. Anyway, if you want a really good new graphic novel, I believe it is a webcomic right now, so I could catch up on how it's happening. This is just the first bound volume of it, and I'm excited to continue with this because it is so good. Next up, I managed to finish the entirety of the Lunar Chronicles with this month, and I read Fairest and Stars Above. I did not realize that Fairest actually should be read between Cress and Winter, but honestly, I'm glad I didn't, because I like my prequel villain stories to be not an afterthought, but read the story and then you kind of go in and understand the villains. So here we are with reading a lot of villain stories. With Fairest, this was great. This was really interesting look into Levana's whole upbringing and stuff. The thing about it is she has a lot of trauma happen to her, and that trauma does fuel a lot of why she's such a horrible villain. But there's also a twistedness to herself in general that taints her and twists her more into the villain. Like, she literally kind of uses her mind control to force a man to marry her, that she is so convinced he actually loves her too, but he is much older than her. He had a wife, he has his daughter Winter, wife dies, and she forces him into this relationship, and it's intense. Her motivation is all clearly better than her sister Channery, who was the queen, and that is Cinder's mom. She's convinced, because Channery was a very flighty character that doesn't really care about politics or anything like that, and Levana does. Levana wants to make sure that her people are, saved and that they're good, and she really gets into it and stuff, and obviously she's the better choice, even though the choices she's making are really terrible. It's crazy. It's just a crazy look into Levana's backstory and how she became so twisted, and it's not that something made her that way. It was many things, but also at her core she was this way, which is how I like my female villains, instead of them being, slighted by a man. Granted, Levana kind of does get slighted by a man, but it's a little bit more in-depth than just that. Then with Stars Above, this is a bunch of short stories that are prequels and a kind of big epilogue story that I loved, except I really wanted more Cress and Thorn in the last part of it. But we got a lot of prequels. Carswell's Thorn's, his whole prequel story is so Thorn. I really enjoyed that too. Just everybody's kind of beginnings into how we get into the world of Lunar Chronicles. I really enjoyed it. Sometimes I don't really enjoy a lot of novellas in series and stuff, but this was good. I probably will go back and read our little epilogue-y story yet again, because it was so sweet and so cute, and oh my god. I really enjoyed Lunar Chronicles. It's something that I wish I had read as a teenager, because I would have been so obsessed with it. This is something that my teenage self would have just loved, but it wasn't out when I was a teenager, so we don't need to talk about how long ago it was since I've been a teenager. Yikes. Another 2020 read that I knocked off my list was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Now, again, people were not enjoying this as much as they enjoyed The Night Circus, and I can agree with that. I do still love The Night Circus more than Starless Sea, but I did really like The Starless Sea. It was fairly complicated, and you really had to pay attention to it, but the prose is so good. I actually highlighted some of my favorite lines in this on my Goodreads, and on my Facebook I was quoting it. It's just so interesting, and I just really loved the narrator himself. Was honestly very good. Actually, there was a couple narrators, but the narrator for Zachary Ezra Rollins was very good, and I liked it a lot. It's kind of like magical realism, urban fantasy kind of stuff going on. There's some timey-wimey stuff happening here. It was very similar in a way to the 10,000 Doors of January. They're different, but they have some vibes that go along together with it, and I just really like this. This is such beautiful prose. Erin Morgenstern's writing is just so amazing, and we also have a gay main character as well. The kind of love story that builds up for him and this other character is very interesting, and it's not out of the blue, but it doesn't have the same buildup that a lot of other romances do, because it is not the focal point of any of this, and it's just, you gotta read it to kind of get it, So I do recommend reading the audiobook for this. It's a hulking book. It's a pretty big baby, but it's worth it. It's worth the read. Erin Morgenstern is one of my favorite authors now, so. And this is a signed first edition copy. We're almost through. So I read The Hummingbird Dagger by Cindy Anstey. This is a historical fiction mystery with some romance in it, but we have a main character who falls off a carriage and hits her head and has amnesia. There are people trying to get her and steal her back and murder her, and it's like, what? Who done it? What? Why? But she ends up with this lovely family who takes care of her, and the guy in the family is, you know, head over heels in love with her. Well, they don't start off that way. It's an okay build. The romance part of it is really not the focus for me that made me like this book. I thought the romance almost was a little out of place, but it didn't matter because the twists that happen, the reasons for everything that's going on is really, really cool. I kind of was hoping that the secret with the Hummingbird Dagger was that, like, she was like a murderer or something, but it's not that. It's something else entirely. But still, I didn't mind it, but I was kind of hoping it was going that way, and it didn't. That's fine. If you want a really good historical fiction mystery romance, like, this is gonna be a nice fun book for you. I'm excited to read. I have a couple others of Cindy Anstey's books that I really want to read. She does a lot of historical fiction, it looks like. It looks like all her books are historical fiction, so it's like Mystery Jane Austen. That's what this is. Last two books. We have Carrie Fisher, The Princess Diarist. This was a really short audiobook that I had to snag because I was trying to complete the challenges for the reading rush, and I liked this to a point. I mean, Carrie Fisher's early life was it's kind of sad, but also the way she writes is very funny. The audiobook is narrated by her and her daughter. It kind of made me hate Harrison Ford, though. Because when you go back to that time and how young she was compared to him, and him being married during their kind of affair on set on Star Wars, it was very kind of creepy the way he was with it, because she was really feeling like she was in love with him and he wasn't giving her anything back. So it was kind of like he's using her just for the fling on set, which is really awful to think about. So her daughter reads the actual diaries that she kept on set. And Carrie Fisher's original writing of her diary is very poetic. And that's not something you expect from like a 19-year-old girl's diary being that poetic, but it is. And I really enjoyed reading that and seeing what she was thinking and feeling at the time of filming Star Wars. A lot of people wanted more about the inside of Star Wars and stuff, and the end of the book, it's kind of noting how she became more of a commodity than a person because of the way that she's treated, you know, having to really sell her soul and, you know, go to autographs and stuff, even though there's great fans. But I can get this because people are like, oh, she's hating on the fans. The types of fans that come up to her and talk to her and stuff as if they've known her forever, it's just so strange. And I can't, it's like weird that the fans don't see that what they're doing is super awkward and weird and uncomfortable for her because she's a real person. I get it because I go to conventions, and sometimes the people you meet at conventions are on a different level than yourself, and it resonates with her and with her writing. It's definitely worth it. It's only like a 5-hour audiobook, so it's a really short one that you can easily get through in a day. So check it out. And the last book I read in July was extremely disappointing, but that is Warm Bodies by Isaac Marion. I finally have read this book. I did see the movie a long time ago, and I actually enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a fun romp, Romeo and Juliet, but zombies? Like, sure, why not? I had enjoyed the movie. The problem with this book is there's actually like a bunch of fat shaming that happens in this book that I was not expecting. R's best friend M is actually fat, so in the movie you don't really see it. You just know he's an older guy, but he's not really fat, and he is fat here. And Julie says the words fat fuck an awful lot for this. Though when they go and hide out in a house of somebody's, you know, former person's, she pulls out the dresses and was like, oh, this person must have made a really nice meal for the zombies. And R is like, no, we don't eat fat people. It's not substance enough. And I'm like, the hell? There was like a lot of fat shaming that happened in this. And it's a very different ending than how the movie goes. There are a lot of differences, and I just didn't enjoy it. So I have the other 2 books in the series, but I don't think I'm going to read them. They hold no interest to me if this is his writing style, so no thanks. Not happy with that. So we kind of ended the month on a downside. I was trying to finish one more book, but it's August now, so it's going to go into the August read side of things. I have a lot of books planned for August now based on what's in my Libby app. So there's some that are not classics that are going to happen in Classics Month because Libby says so. That's what I read in July. What did you guys read? Have you read any of these books? What are your thoughts on them? What ones do you want to pick up? I recommend quite a few of these because it was a really fun time, especially the beginning of the month. I had a really fun time reading. So, woo! That is all of them. If you guys like this content, check out my Ko-fi page and you can donate to me as a content creator. And of course, if you have any further questions or comments, we'll leave them down below or on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, and I'll see you next time, cuties. Bye! It reminisces of, and that's why, excuse you, I'll get to you in a moment.